This conference will now be recorded.
So, in yesterday's session, we have focused on how to develop OData service with BAPI with mapping technique. So, let me explain how to test that service. What are the keywords we can use it to test the service? Testing OData service via gateway client. So, say for example, I want to fetch all records, or I want to fetch records based on filter inputs. I want to fetch record count. I want to fetch record count. Or I want to fetch records with specific fields. I want to fetch records with specific fields. I want to check the metadata of OData service. I want to check metadata of OData service. Metadata will show the service document. Metadata is nothing but it is part of service document. Okay, so similarly, I want to check the output records using XML syntax. This is by default available. By default, when you test the service, the output data is displayed in XML format. XML format. By default, when you test any OData service through gateway client, the output will be displayed in the form of XML format. But there is another format. You can also check the output records using JSON format. We can check the output records using JSON format also. So first, let me highlight all these things. Let me open gateway client to explain all these things. I'm going to SCGW T code. And yesterday we have created one of the project with all these options. And we have generated runtime artifacts. Then we have defined mapping with getEntitySet method with a BAPI. We maintained mapping with getEntitySet method with a BAPI. So all those things we have done in yesterday's session. And if you want to test the service, you need to go to service maintenance here, then go to gateway client. Just go to gateway client, then click on S here. Now it opens HTTP request, HTTP response, and you'll get a service URL here. So this is a service URL. For all OData services, the service URL syntax remains same. For all OData ABAP services, this syntax remains same. So let me highlight that. This is the first one. For all OData ABAP services, the service URL syntax is below. So this is a syntax, and in this syntax, SAP OPU OData. And then there is SAP, and then there is service name. SAP OPU OData, that is the service path. SAP is the namespace. That means it's like a folder. It's like a folder, and this is the OData service name. So I mean to say SAP OPU OData. Up to this is service path. SAP is namespace. And then this is OData service name. This is very simple but very important. Let me just highlight this. One is service path, another is namespace, then the last one is OData service name. This syntax is applicable for all OData services of ABAP. All OData services ABAP, this syntax is applicable. Now, if you want to access OData service, from the front end, this service URL has to be utilized. To access OData ABAP service from any front-end app, it can be UI5 or Fiori or .NET or PHP, whatever. To access OData service from any front-end app, so you have to use this particular syntax, which I have highlighted here. In case of OData ABAP services. Just remember this. Now, let us go to the first one here. I want to fetch all records. If you want to fetch all records, what we used to do is, first you need to select entity set here. You can see there is a top section. There is entity set. So, all the entity sets of that service will be visible here. There is only one entity set in this example. So I am selecting that entity set flight set, which we have created yesterday. So if you use this syntax, the service URL, along with that we are using entity set here to collect all output records. not passing any input. You can execute the service now. When you execute the service, you'll get the data in XML format and you'll get all the records here. American Airlines, Japan Airlines, you can see all those things. Singapore Airlines, United Airlines, etc., etc. So you are able to get all records if you use this syntax here. This is a service URL. After service URL, we are just using entity set name in order to collect output records. Say for example, okay, let me just take this screenshot. This should be the main focus. Right, then, say for example, I want to fetch records based on input. I want to fetch records based on filter input. Then after entity set, you can use some question mark symbol, dollar, filter is the keyword, and you can use equal to airline ID EQ. That means equal to, for example, AA, American Airlines I'm expecting. Airline ID EQ AA, so I'm expecting American Airlines here. So we are expecting output based on some input. You can execute the service again. It is taking some time. Okay, now you can see we are able to get the new output with only American Airlines here. You can see that. There are several records matching with airline ID AA, and we are getting only those records. You can notice that. Even if you scroll down, the last record is also belonging to AA, American Airlines. So you can use this syntax here, or while testing you can try with other values. LH, SQ for Singapore Airlines, UA United Airlines, JL Japan Airlines, or okay, let me remove this. You can try these things. Now say for example, I want to fetch record count. Before that, let me take this screenshot. Let me save it. Now let me go to the next one, that is, I want to fetch record count here. So what you can do is, you can select add URI option here. Select add URI option. Under that you can see there is $count. There are several options here, but there is $count here. dollar count, select it, and execute the service. Just let me remove this filter and use dollar count, execute the service. Now here you can see we are getting something like 408 records. 408 records are coming to an entity set here. So that's the record count of this particular so-and-so entity set which is used in this service. That's a maximum record count in this case. You can use this, and this is a record count. Now let me go with the syntax for record count. Let me copy that. Now say for example, I want to access records with specific fields. I want to access records with specific fields. So you can use like this. After entity set, you can use question mark dollar, select, let me try, select equal to, for example, airline ID I want to display and price I want to display. Only these two fields I want to display, for example. Or, okay, first let me try this, execute. Now you can see we are getting the output records only with respect to those two specific fields, airline ID and price. You can see all records with same airline ID and price is displayed here. You can notice that. Let me add one more field, airline ID, airline and price. 3 fields I'm adding. Now you can see we are getting the data with respect to those 3 fields here. You can notice that. Airline ID, airline and the price. So you can use this syntax with select as a keyword. Select is a keyword. You can use it in service URL and you can provide field 1, field 2, field 3 to access data with specific fields. You can try like this. 3 fields or 2 fields or 5 fields, it all depends on your requirement while testing. Let me take this screenshot here. One. Say for example, I want to check the entire metadata of this OData service. I want to check the entire metadata. That means what are the entity types used, what are the fields used, what are the entity sets available, and what is the service URL of the service. I want to check all those things. So you can see there is add URI option. What you do is just select $metadata here. Something like $metadata and execute the service. Then you'll get the information metadata information related to the service which we have created. So if you closely observe this particular screenshot, we are using $metadata, and here it is indicating which field is a key field. In our case, airline ID is a key field. And what are the other fields available in this particular service? You can see something like airline ID, airline, you can see connect ID, airport from, etc., etc. And along with that, there will be a data type here, length. You can notice that. Data type of each field plus length of that each field is also available here for all these things. Fetch metadata of OData service. Not only that, if you scroll down, if you just scroll down, you'll get some more options here. You can see there is entity set name here, that is flight set in this example. If there are multiple entity sets, all those things will be visible here in this service document. If there are 3 entity sets, all the names of those 3 entity sets will be available in the service document when you use $metadata in Gateway Client. And you can see here, this is a service, complete service URL. On this server, this is a complete service URL. You can notice that. Under that, you can see SAP, OPU, OData, SAP, and the service name. So if you want to get this information, ultimately you have to use $metadata here. Then, not only that, okay, first let me copy this syntax. Now, I want to check the output records using XML format. That is by default. Anyhow, this is by default. All your OData web services will display output records using XML format. But if you want to specify the name of the format, if you want to specify the format in the URL, that is possible. You can see here. I am selecting entity set. I am selecting entity set. And I am selecting URI option. Under URI option, you can see there is something like $format equal to JSON. $format equal to JSON, but I want to use XML. I am using $format equal to XML. Even if you don't use this, by default output is displayed in XML format. You can see that. This is your XML format here. There is a begin tag, there is end tag, and there is data in between that. airline begin tag, airline end tag, and there is data in between that. You can see that. So by default, even if you don't use format equal to XML, ultimately it will display data in XML format itself. That's a default behavior. So you can just observe that output here, which is in XML format. Okay, let me save this. Now, say for example, I want to access the same data, same output in JSON format. If you are not convenient, or if you are not comfortable with XML format, you can also check your output using JSON format. So you can use format equal to JSON. You can use format equal to JSON. The same output will be displayed in more meaningful format, that is JSON format here. You can notice that. Now you can see left side field name, right side value. Left side field name and right side its value. Field name and its value. You can see that price is a field name, left side displayed, and right side 422, that's a value here. For every record, you'll get the same approach. So if you're not comfortable with XML format, you can also analyze the output even using JSON format. This is much simpler here. So it doesn't matter whether you use XML format or JSON format for testing. Okay, this is just for our comfortable purpose. If you're not convenient or not comfortable with your XML, then you can go for JSON. Okay, but there is no difference with respect to any performance here. Don't analyze performance, that is invalid, because this is just to test your service. This is just to test your service with input and output. So whether it is XML or JSON, the performance wise there won't be any problem here. The way you display the output, that is slightly changing while testing. So this URL you can use it, and this is how JSON format output looks like. The same output with JSON format. Now you can see here we are getting all records with JSON format. But say for example, I want to use $$ filter equal to airline ID EQ something like LH. I want to get the output based on this filter input, and I want to use JSON format to analyze that output. I want to fetch output records based on filter input. On top of that, I want to get the output with JSON format. Then you can add that format equal to JSON. can see dollar format equal to JSON. Let me execute. Now you can see we are getting the data in JSON format and we are getting records matching with airline ID LH, that is Lufthansa Airways. Airline ID matching with LH, that is Lufthansa, and the records are displayed in JSON format here. So you can use this syntax. If needed, you can also use this approach. Here we are fetching records based on filter input, and the output has to be displayed in JSON format. We are trying to do fetching of data based on filter, and we are expecting our output in JSON format. Okay, so just remember that. Fetch records based on filter input with, for example, JSON format. So let me copy this. I want to check the output records using JSON format. Let me use the basic version. Let me copy this. Okay, so you can use that, and this is to fetch or check the output records based on filter input with JSON format. So I copied both the syntaxes here. All records with JSON format and records based on filter input in JSON format. And if you want to check the output records with XML format specifier, then just you can use the same syntax here. And instead of JSON, try to use XML. So these are the options which you need to remember at this point of time. Let me separate all these things so that you can easily recognize. Now, let us understand some more basics here. So as I said earlier, let me go back. So you can see, if you go to MPC class, under MPC class, there will be two main options under type section. Under type section, you can see table structure flight, table type flight here. Table structure flight, table type flight, both are auto-generated according to our entity type. Now I want to utilize, if you want to utilize this entity type table structure, entity type table type, if you want to utilize that in your coding, then you have to follow certain syntax. So syntax to utilize table structure of MPC class under DPC extension class. I want to utilize table structure MPC class under DPC extension class when I write the code in the coming days. Then you can use data statement, work area, type. You have to provide MPC class name, equals arrow mark. Then you have to use table structure, for example, something like EMP. If EMP is your entity type, then table structure becomes TSEMP. You can declare work area with type by providing MPC class name. By providing MPC class name, then you can use equal arrow mark with table structure, for example, table structure EMP. So that means we can refer table structure in our coding. In the coming days, we are going to do it, and this can be used for declaring work area. This is a syntax for utilizing table structure under DPC extension class in order to declare work area. There is one more syntax you need to notice. Syntax to utilize the table type of MPC class under DPC extension class. I want to use it. And we can use this table type, we can use the table type for declaring internal table. We can refer table type of MPC class in order to declare an internal table. Data statement, ITAB, that is like internal table. ITAB, that is like internal table. Type, MPC class name. MPC class name equal arrow mark, then TT. TT means table type. Underscore, for example, EMP. So we are using internal table by referring to table type. We are using work area by referring to table structure. So both these syntaxes, we are going to use it in our further development. Better to recognize now itself. Now say for example, I want to use a syntax to refer to a specific field of a table structure. I want to refer specific field of table structure. Then you can use data statement, for example, first name. Type, you have to provide MPC class name, then equals arrow mark. You can use table structure, EMP hyphen that field name. MPC class name, table structure hyphen that field name. So we are declaring one variable, same like first name field of the table structure of MPC class. Something like this. Salary, type, MPC class name, equals arrow mark, table structure, EMP hyphen that specific field name. So you can use this type of syntaxes in our coding. We are going to do that. Very commonly used in OData development. Now, not only that, you should recognize which statements, which ABAP statements you can use in OData, which ABAP statements you cannot use. Let us discuss that. when you're writing the code, there are some ABAP statements which you can use it same like normal ABAP. But there are some ABAP statements which you cannot use. So let us understand that. So ABAP statements which can be used in OData ABAP service development. So let me highlight the ABAP statements which can be utilized in OData service development. So what are those ABAP statements which you can utilize? So you can write your select query same like your normal ABAP. You can use that in OData development. We can use insert statement same like your normal ABAP. We can use a delete statement, update statement. We can utilize same like normal ABAP. And not only that, we can utilize something like move statement, move corresponding, and we can use sort statement, clear statement, refresh statement. We can utilize work area related operations. We can utilize internal table related operations. We can utilize all work area related operations in OData development. Similarly, we can utilize internal table related operations in OData service development. And not only that, we can utilize commit work. Commit work is an ABAP statement we can utilize. Then rollback we can utilize in normal ABAP statements, but you can use the same statement, same syntax in OData service development as well if required. And we can utilize if, end if, case, something like end case, and loop, end loop. So these are all normal ABAP statements which you can utilize even in OData service development with same syntax and same approach. If, end if, case, end case, loop, end loop, these are all normal ABAP statements, but they are also applicable for OData service development. And not only that, we can use tables, we can use structures, we can use something like table types, we can use something like search helps of S11. Tables, structures, table types, search helps, views. So all these things can be utilized even in OData service development. So these are all belonging to S11, something like data dictionary. So these things can be utilized inside OData service development whenever required. And not only that, we can use all string operations. We can use all string operations, for example, concatenate, condense, replace, translate, shift, etc. We can use all string operations same like normal ABAP inside OData development with same syntax. The syntax which we use in normal ABAP, it is also applicable even for OData ABAP service development. these things can be utilized. And not only that, we can also utilize call function statement to call function module or RFC or a PAPI. In our OData service development, inside our OData service methods, we can access a function module, RFC or a PAPI just by using same like normal ABAP syntax with call function statement. Call function, and for call function you can use exporting, importing, etc. etc. And then we can also call methods of various classes. If required, you can also call the methods of various object-oriented ABAP classes. That is possible. And similarly, we can also use system variables or system fields like SciDatum for date, current date, SciUzEIT, that is for current time, SciIndex, SciUname, the current user, and Sci-language, SciLanguage, then DBCNT, database count, etc. etc. So these type of statements are normal ABAP statements or normal ABAP system fields, but they can be utilized even inside OData ABAP service development. SciDatum, SciIndex, SciUname, SciLanguage, SciDBCNT, SciUzEIT, etc. etc. So we can use all these things. But let me write a simple note here. All ABAP statements can be used in OData service development except ABAP screen related statements. Very important, very simple, but very important. You can use all ABAP statements, but you should not use ABAP screen related statements in OData development. Anything related to ABAP screen, any statement related to ABAP screen, that you should not use it in OData. Even if you use it forcefully, it will not work. Anything related to ABAP screens, those type of ABAP screen related statements, you should not use it in OData service development. So, because OData is meant for database functionality, OData is not for screen designing. ABAP screen related statements, you should not use it in OData because OData is meant for database operations, not for screen designing. If you want to develop the screens, we have to go for UI5 Fiori. In our technology, if you want to develop the screens, then we have to go with UI5 Fiori, not ABAP screens, not ABAP screen related statements. So, here, let me write a note here. ABAP screen related statements cannot be used inside OData service development because OData service is meant for implementing only database operations. But for screen designing or screen development, we need to use either SAP UI5 or SAP Fiori framework. ABAP screen related statements cannot be used in OData development because OData service is meant for implementing database operations. And if you want to develop the screens, you have to go with SAP UI5 Fiori. So, what are the ABAP screen related statements? ABAP screen related statements like call screen, for example, screen number 200. So this is ABAP screen related statement. Call screen number 200, that is ABAP screen related statement. You cannot use it in OData. But we can achieve this feature by using UI5 Fiori. And we cannot use call transaction, for example, transaction code VH01. Call transaction code VH01. So this is ABAP screen related transaction code. So you cannot directly use it in OData. If you want to use it, you have to use a different technique in UI5 Fiori. You have to apply UI5 Fiori technique, not ABAP technique. And similarly, something like selection screen. Selection screen is an ABAP screen related statement. Selection screen is ABAP screen related statement not applicable in OData. So instead of this, we use a different technique in UI5 Fiori. We create a form, we use a simple form, etc. instead of selection screen of ABAP statement. And not only that, select options. Select options is also an ABAP screen related statement here. That you cannot use it in OData service development. If you want, you have to use the same concept with a different approach in UI5 Fiori. So for low value, high value, we generally use select options, but the same concept you can apply in UI5 Fiori with a different syntax, but not by using ABAP syntax. So similarly, SY-LSIND, list index. I want to capture the list index. So list index is also related to ABAP screen related statement you cannot apply in OData. SY-LISEL, that is line selected. I want to capture selected line, but this is ABAP screen related statement, so you should not use it in OData. Etc. etc. So these are all not applicable inside OData. These statements are not applicable inside OData. ABAP screen related statements are not applicable in OData, for example, these things. And remaining other than ABAP screen related statements, you can comfortably utilize. Other than ABAP screen related statements, other ABAP statements can be comfortably utilized in your OData development. So I hope you got some idea now. There may be several statements I may not have highlighted here. There can be any statements, but ABAP screen related statement you should avoid. Okay students, so I'll stop here. In the next session, we will try to understand how to practically implement get entity method. CRUD methods we are going to implement practically from the next session.